Creating a organic looking outdoors map can be a real struggle for map makers. If you're new or quite experienced yourself already, it can be quite hard to get right. And if this is something that you struggle with, please do stick around because that's exactly what we're going to discuss in this video. Hello and welcome everyone, my name is Fake Fairy Tale and today I would like to focus on textures and cliff sides, specifically for outdoor maps. So we won't be focusing on houses, dungeons or anything like that, something that I've covered extensively on the channel, but I expect this to be some sort of series with tips and tricks related to outdoor mapping. And the first thing that we're going to start with is textures and blending. Now, it's all fun and games that you can see what the end result is, but you're of course curious to the process. So let's dive into an empty canvas and we'll create this map from scratch. On the left hand side, we're going to unlock 4 more slots because I have a computer that can actually do this quite easily. I've not often noticed any kind of difference in performance for me. And on the left hand side, you also have smooth blending, but I don't want to touch on that today. I'm not that enthusiastic about the results that it gives you. And I often like to blend my textures just simply by clicking and by adding some additional textures to the whole piece, especially for water and other textures. The smooth blending doesn't really work for me. So in order to determine how our textures are going to look like, I often first want to consider whether or not I'm going to be using cliffs or anything of the sorts within the map. And I think for the sake of a good tutorial, I think it might be good to add a few in here. So we're going to go and grab ourselves the Cliff Dirt 02 F1, and the idea that I have right now is that we have a pathway at the bottom of this map and we'll add in some ridges on top. And we'll do a few different ones. Starting, I noticed a slope when I was scrolling through these, so we'll grab that in a second, and we'll use some of these ridges a bit further up. So we'll take the grow in and shrink out settings. I'm just going to leave it at 1 for now, especially for cliffs. The base settings work quite well. And we're going to turn off snap to grid. And then I think it's time to try and make a cliff out here. So let's see what we want. Let's have one of them originate from above the map and just work its way in here. And then I want to have this one come in from the left hand side, and I want to create a lot of bends in here because in real life a cliff would also probably look more or less the same, wouldn't be linear at all, so that's what we want to do here. And now we can use the transition grow in and shrink in. We'll zoom in a bit further, and I think for these ones I want them to be a bit smaller because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if the cliff just grows like a giant cliff grows out of nothing, and when they are a bit smaller we can create that kind of depth quite easily. We'll just add in a few ridges here and there. And then we're going to look at that slope that I mentioned. It's a bit further down in your scroll bar. And we're going to grab the Slope Dirt 01A1. And that one I want to, again, have it on width 1, no transition in and no transition out. And if the pathway is going to be more or less on the bottom 2 grids, then I want the slope to be a bit further up. And this one you can create with quite a bit fewer bends in there because it's more of a gradual slope. There we are. And we're going to use textures and shading to make sure that the height difference makes sense. Now we have some other ribbons in here that I want to use later as well, but that's that we do when the textures are put down. Okay, now we switch to textures. And with all that said, the first thing that we want is a grass texture. And I think it's always a bit finicky to find the right one in here. Here we are. And I think I want to use the grass B03. Let's have a quick check. This looks quite well. That's a bit brighter. that's too bright. So we're going to go with Grass B02, and then we're going to need a few other textures. I like to group them together, so I want another grass texture as well. Let's make that short grass, maybe A02. Let's quickly check this out. Yeah, I think that will blend quite nicely. And then maybe we can add in grass D01, because this blends in quite smoothly as well. And I want a few different textures to create some diversity, because when you walk outside through the woods, you won't probably see the exact same color of grass everywhere. You kind of want to go for this blend of all different kinds of shapes, colors, and textures that blend in together quite well, so that you can create this variety. And the good thing is that we don't have any water in here, so that we have some more textures available. Though I do try and like to use all of them, but if you only have 4 available, you're going to have to sacrifice some on diversity. So then just pick the ones that are most important to you, and make sure that you have at least a grass, a dirt, maybe some gravel, and then a water texture if you need water. With that out of the way, I think it would be good to add in some dirt. And for the dirt, I think I'd like to grab ourselves the either the A01 or the B. Oh, I think A is fine. Yeah, that's quite a decent blend. I picked the Cracked Dirt A as a texture because I like this to use for pathways or places that a lot of people walk around. And then we have the Dirt B04 to help blend that in with the environment. Then we want some kind of gravel as well that we often use for people to either walk over or at the base or at the edges of cliffs to break up the grass textures. And for that, I like to use these more brown ones. I think this would work. Yeah, that's great. I'll grab another one of those, and let's leave the last slot open for now. I'm not entirely sure if I'm actually going to use the Cracked Dirt A04. I might just create the pathways with these gravel textures that we have, because we can create quite a nice mix-up. I do think we might need one with a bit more grain, so let's see if we can stay in the same style here. That's 07B and 07D, and we'll grab 07E. That seems to blend quite nicely. So then we have 3 different kinds of gravels in here, and we're going to leave this slot open. Now with that out of the way, let's place down the gravel pathway so that we know where it's going to be. And right now I'm just gonna hold my mouse and drag the pathway along the edge where I want it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. And let's create a little detour here as well, because so when I go out hiking in the woods, you can see the pathway, and usually there are like smaller pathways going left or right, minor detours that you can walk over. So we want to add those in as well to create the sense that not everybody is going to walk in the exact same pathway, and also to create a bit more variety, have some of these grass textures come through the rocks as well. And maybe we can be wild and just add one detour going straight down here. Now let's clean this up a little bit here and there so that the pathway is quite clear. And I want to do the same thing up here a little bit, so that we have some gravel textures and some grass mixed along the edges, because you see the colors match quite nicely with the cliffs that we have. And it's not going to be all grass anyway. So let's see if we can keep the grass textures. And I don't want it to overlap too much. We're going to blend the edge of the cliffs with a grass ribbon. And we do need a bit of rock on top, of course, because it doesn't make sense if it's all just grass. So we want to blend that as well. And maybe up here we can have some kind of pathway as well. It doesn't have to go all the way out. Just create a bit of a larger section and a pathway that goes back here again. And now we have the generic outline of textures. We're going to start blending things together. So we'll grab our grass texture, and I want to create some of these patches of different colored grass everywhere. On places that it does make sense. So this grass seems to be a bit longer than the rest. You don't want to have a lot of that really close to the dirt, because usually there's some kind of gradual change from long grass to shorter to dirt, and it's not often going to cut off immediately, though you can do it at some places. You don't have to be very conscious about it. And then we're going to grab the last version of the grass as well. And we'll create some more, a bit lush green grass on some places. You can overlap that with the other shorter grass, also up here, over there. And you already see you get quite a dynamic blend of different colors of grass. Make sure that some of it touches with the grass short version. And mixes through a little bit. And maybe on the outline of some of it. And a bit further out on the edge of the grass we can have some vines there later in a different video. And we'll grab the grass short once more and we'll add it in down here as well, because I forgot to do that. Alright, the blending is not perfect yet. We're going to turn off the grid for now, but we're going to do that with the ribbons that I'll show you at the end of the video. And now I do want to do a quick check with the color of this grass, because it does seem somewhat green, so potentially we want it to be a bit different. We have to remember which one we have now, but changing it up is rather easy, because you can simply click through it, and if you remember which one you had, you see the results immediately on your map. And I actually think I like grass D01 best. D02 blends in better with the color, but I do want some variation there. So there we are. Now with that out of the way, we're going to have a look at the dirt and the gravel. And the first thing that we want to do is to change up the texture of the dirt that we have here. So right now we use a gravel with a lot of big chunks in there, and we want to change that, especially around the edges, to something that's a bit finer in graining. And the lower the ladder, the lower the graining is as well. So you have like D that's sort of in between. So we'll take that one first, and especially for the smaller pathways, we'll change that up. And I'm just going to apply and remove some of the bigger stones that we have in here. Switch up the textures and up there. And like especially those ones we want to remove. We can put back some of the grass in a little bit as well, because those don't really make a lot of sense. And then we grab the last one, and we'll do that in fast forward as well. I'm just gonna work around the edges, maybe create a few rough spots here and there as well. Alright, and we're done with regards to the dirt. I scaled up the size of the brush, and I grabbed the different textures at the end just to create some organic spread out from the original path. And to give you an idea what I mean with that is that if you grab, for example, one of the textures and you hold down your mouse button, you get this really kind of crisp looking round. The edges are quite clean. And then again, if you grab one of the bigger ones and you scale up your brush size and you just rapid click, you can see that the dirt texture kind of organically grows from the spots that you've placed it down. And I like to use that a lot to create some kind of natural blend between the grass textures and the gravel that we have in there. Now with that out of the way, I'm going to do the same thing with the grass textures again, because generally speaking the grass overgrows the pathways. So I'll just do a few of those here and there, just rapid click. That one is a bit too much. Maybe turn down the intensity a little bit. And then we have it recapture some of its lost territory. And it also kind of helps him blend the other grass types. Now I just want to quickly revisit the areas where we have quite a lot of dirt. I do want to add in a little tiny pathway in between here. I think that would look great. There we are. And for example up here, and we're going to add in some grass in there, make sure that it breaks up the pattern a little bit. So we'll add it, for example, over here, make sure that that rock is gone. And let's see if we have another large patch. All right, and then when you're satisfied with your textures, the one important thing that we want to do is add in ribbons, because that's going to blend it all together quite nicely. And there are a few things that we want to place here with ribbons. I mean, basically pathways, but you have two different pathways that would suit really well in here. One being these one, the grass ridges, that we can use to blend in the grass with the stone, and we're going to check which one matches best. And that for now would be grass ridge dirt 0 to A1. And I want to make that quite small, 0.4. And I want to have that grow in and shrink out. And I like to add that to some of these edges of the pathways. So we'll place that down. And I'm starting to think actually that fade in, fade out might work better for this. So we'll use that along the edges. There we are. And we're going to clean up the grass edges over here that come underneath the pathways, because we don't want to have that in there. There we are. And we'll grab it a bit further down here. And for these grass patches, I'm going to use the grass ribbons that I like. So just following the line here, and this one is going to go all the way straight to the end. And then we'll add it in on the other side as well. And that's great. And we could do the same thing around these cliffs, but then the other sides are facing the cliff. We could create a ridge like this. Have it go underneath there. All right, and then I would like to grab the grass ribbons that we have. And they are the ones up here. And I like to use these ones, and that's because you have multiple grass rows, and that saves you a lot of work. You can do a few single lines, but these ones are quite convenient if you want to make it quick. So we're going to move that to 1, and we're going to add that in on the map. We're just going to have to check which one blend in really well. So we have these two that we want to use. The green A1 and the green A2, because the green A2 blends in better with the greener patches of grass, and the A1 blends in better with the rest. And we're going to work from below here. And let's first grab the single line ribbon, and we're going to add that to the cliff edge that we already made. And I think it should be on maybe 0.8 to match with the length of the grass in. It takes a bit to figure that out. The length of the grass in the texture itself, because if it's too big, if the leaves are too big, it does look kind of weird. And because we scaled down the edge over here, the edge of the cliff, the grass on that edge looks kind of weird as well, because it's quite a bit smaller than the rest of the grass around it. So, but we can just mask that a bit with using these pathways. We're just going to repeat this process for most of the pathways that we've placed down. All right, there we are. And now we're going to do the same thing for some of the edges of the cliffs. I don't like the way it blends with grass, so we're going to add that ribbon to make it some sort of a smooth transition in there. And then it makes more sense to see as well. And I don't think I've forgotten anything. And now you already noticed that the cliffs themselves already blend in a bit better. And I would quickly like to go back to the textures and then just clean up these edges a little bit. So we'll grab, for example, the gravel, we'll make it very small, and we'll make sure that the grass is gone by rapid clicking in front of those pathways. I think we can keep this bit of grass here, but let's enhance it a little bit. There we are. And I'm quickly going to clean up the map here by removing these bits of grass. Alright, and with those areas cleaned up more or less, we might encounter a few here and there still. We're going to add in less grass ribbons and then add a little shadow path to make sure that the elevation difference here is obvious. And you can note that I did keep the grass on some places. That's because I want to use it to do the following thing. And that's adding in some grass pathways in front of these little edges over here, just to create some more diversity as well. So we'll check out where we did that and see if we can find another spot. I believe there was one more over here. Alright, and that's good. Now we're going to grab one of these larger pathways and we're going to add in some more grass ribbons. The first thing that I want to do is outline these green patches that are greener than the others. And I always want to put down these pathways in a way that the pathway faces outwards from the grass, as if these patches are higher and are raised above the rest. And if you keep that consistently throughout the map, it will look quite natural as well. And I often just encircle the whole thing, not necessarily always. You don't have to close it off. It doesn't have to line perfectly with the edges as well. So if you like move out a bit too far, you can keep that. You can play that off like it's a natural blend. And let's see, we have some up here. And we can use it inside these areas as well, even if they're already lined out with a different shadow path, just to create some more depth and diversity. So moving it all the way up, we'll move that up to 1. It's okay that it's smaller in the rest of the area, but I like to keep it on 1 because there's some bigger and smaller lines in here anyway. And for some areas we're going to have to make it smaller because the patches are just too small themselves to be looking good when they're outlined width of 1. So we'll put it on 0.6 and we'll follow these edges as well. Alright, and that's it for all the greener patches, and I'm quickly going to fast forward through the next section as well, where I'm just doing this, repeating this process for the other patches of grass. So I'll be right back with you guys. Alright, and another little thing I would like to show you guys before we start wrapping up with the last bit of shading is that you can create these little tufts of grass if you just place these ribbons in some kind of circular way. Half circles would be fine, you don't have to close them off. And then you can create like little tufts of grass that come pop up from the rest of it to create some more texture to look at. So that could be kind of cool. I also added in some grass lining atop of this slope to indicate which is the top side. And now just before we're going to move to the shading, I do want to grab the textures again and clean up the last bits of grass. There's a few specific places that may not look as good after the ribbons have been placed down, the grass ribbons. So we're just going to add in a bit more grass there and try to remove those sections from the map. I also added in some of the grass underneath the cliff sides. It kind of helps sell the cliff sides transition into the grass. Don't specifically know why, but it kind of works. And let me quickly just patch this up. All right, and now we're going to grab the shadow pathways. And there we are. And I like to use the double path because, well, you can use a half path to go underneath here, but then you don't really shade the side of the cliff. You could do it that way. So first you place down the half path and then you place down some shadows on top. But I do find that this way is actually rather easy and provides quite a decent end result as well. It's not perfect, but we can patch that up a little bit. So we're just going to outline the edges of the cliffs here. And because we have a fade in, we do need to keep an eye on those edges to make sure that the fade in doesn't start from too far in. We'll do the same thing here with the hillside. And we'll try and see if we can edit some more places where that's necessary. Alright, and here we are. Let's zoom out a bit for a proper view. I did add a few things in the end. I added a half shadow path underneath the edges for the small cliffs here. I made it very thin, so at 0.14. And for the larger ones, I left it at 0.5 and just outlined them, followed them along the side. I added three light sources, my apologies, all the way up here. One brighter one a bit more dim at about 0.7 intensity. And then we have the last one over here at 0.5 to create the idea of a sun shining over here, which also helps to sell the shades that we have here. And I think we could actually lay it on a bit thicker if we want to, on a few specific areas like this outline over here. So if we put it on fade in, fade out, and you can maybe just create even a shadow that goes a bit further out. Make sure that it's properly dark on the inside here, because there's not going to be much sunlight over there. And I think we can do the same thing over here as some sort of last finishing touch. Now, before I dive into the end credits, I do think I want to use this map for some more tutorials with regards to the outside, because that's something I haven't covered much on my channel. So you'll see this map pass along your feed a few more times in the future. Alright, and there we are. And that's how you'd approach grasses, cliffs and nature, or at least that's how I would do it. If you have any questions with regards to anything that I've done here, please feel free to shoot them in the comments. And also, if you don't have any questions or just want to voice your opinion on the map or just help me out, a comment or a like would go a long way for me to be found by the algorithm. And it's a measurement for my videos that I use personally a lot in my statistics. If I see a lot of people engage with the video, I like that a lot. I get a lot of energy from that because it means I'm doing, generally speaking, something right. So it will really help me out. And if you want to go even a bit further and support the channel, I do have a Patreon page where I have a few maps that I've made in the past that I released. I do believe that when this map's finished, I'll be releasing it on there as well, alongside with some tokens, some character portraits for NPCs or player characters that a friend of mine made. So if you want to support the channel or check that out, please feel free to find the link in the description. Now, I would like to thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.